Hello and welcome to the broadcast. My name is Tim Staples, and you are listening to Catholic Answers Live. We have 2 hours of lively apologetics just for you, and we have a very special guest in this first hour. And I have to warn you, we have a guest. I don't know if I can recommend the guest the second hour. His name is Tim Staples, but I can. Yes, I will be both guest and host for the second hour. But in this first hour, we have Colin Donovan, who is the Vice President for Theology at EWTN, as well as one of the hosts of the very popular apologetics broadcast, Open Line. Hello, Colin. Welcome.
Hey, Tim. Good to be on.
And how are things?
You're running the ship today. That's good.
It's probably a sinking ship with me running it, but good thing we have you here in the first hour. But how are things at EWTN?
Well, pretty good. Like everybody else, we're trying to deal with our current situation, but finding it, and you guys probably found the same thing, that it's neither difficult nor hard to work from home from many perspectives. But
yes. Right.
So we're making do, and we're looking forward to it being over, of course, at some point.
Boy, we sure are as well, and we're kind of learning on the fly. But at any rate, it is great to have you here with us. And I was curious, a lot of times here at Catholic Answers, we get questions about apologetics in general. Mm-hmm. And from your perspective, being a theologian as well as an apologist at EWTN, what do you see as some of the most important things that are being accomplished in apologetics and have been over the last couple decades?
Well, I think the distinction between apologetics and theology, although in paper is clear, in reality the lines get smudged very easily between being, sort of fulfilling that desire that we should always be ready to give an account on the one hand, but on the other hand, to take that account and to broaden and deepen and synthesize in a way what the totality of the gospel is saying. And I think in the case of apologetics is very often, as I know you deal with all the time, probably even more so than we do on the air, and that is with the non-Catholics with the confused idea of the faith.
Yes.
And so that getting to that appreciation of what Fulton Sheen always used to say, in 10,000 people who say they don't, believe in the Catholic Church,
yes,
there probably maybe a one or two who actually know what the Catholic Church teaches.
Yes.
And so I think that's the main emphasis in the last number of decades, is trying to clarify all the misunderstandings that even many Catholics have, sadly,
yes,
because of the catechesis of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s.
Absolutely. There's a whole lot of straw men out there, a whole lot of caricatures. And if you want to join in on the conversation with Colin Donovan, I'm your host, Tim Staples. You are listening to Catholic Answers Live. That phone number, we'd love to hear your questions on any aspect of Catholic theology or practice at 888-31-TRUTH or 888-318-7884. Let me say that again, at 888-318-7884. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you're not a Catholic. You are welcome. Maybe you're a Catholic, a little confused about what's going on in the church, what's being claimed to be Catholic teaching. You're welcome as well. Once again, at 888-318-7884. And Colin, perhaps we can start with I wouldn't say the most common question, but it's certainly up there. A lot of folks who are not Catholic, and I can speak from experience, as you knew, Colin, mm-hmm. I was an Assembly of God youth minister before I became Catholic. One of the biggest problems I had with Catholic theology was this, right along with Luther, at least later on, mm-hmm. Luther, when he completely departed from the Catholic faith, had a big problem with this dogma of purgatory. And for me, it appeared to deny two essential teachings that I believed as a Protestant, and that is, number one, it denied the sufficiency of the sacrifice of Christ, the way I was taught as a young Baptist anyway. And secondly, it appeared to be a second chance theology, right? Those were the two. And I don't know about you, Colin, but we get this question a lot. In fact, Carlin Broussard has just come out with a book that's actually available for pre-order. And I know I did a lot of work with him on that by way of review. It's an excellent book that deals with purgatory every which way but loose. But how would you tackle those two issues?
Well, I think there's some basic assumptions. Of course, there's the question of, what did Christ intend when he said certain things? And I think we were talking about apologetics versus theology. One of the things that the Catholic Church has as an advantage is the idea that we appreciate that the early church came to an understanding of things that was not delivered fully to them. There was the idea of a prayer for the dead, which the Jewish people did and which they continued to do, for example. What was the possible implication of that? Now, even if you don't accept the book of Maccabees and the idea is that Judas Maccabeus would send an offering to pray for the minor faults that his soldier committed in a superstitious act of wearing an amulet going into battle,
right?
Even if you don't accept the canonicity of that, the fact is that the Jews prayed for the dead. And what purpose did that have? What purpose did Christ's statement on the Sermon on the Mount have when he said, settle with somebody with whom you have some kind of a conflict before you get to the judge, because you'll go into the prison,
Yes.
and you won't come out until you played the last debt. Was Jesus really all that concerned about secular settling of questions?
Right.
No, he's more concerned about the eternal settling of questions.
Right.
So Christ's sacrifice is sufficient in doing something that we are not able to do, and that is repairing the breach of sin with the Father, the insult to the dignity of the Godhead. Only he could do that because acting in his human nature and having the meritorious value of his divine nature, he was able to fulfill that. We're not relieved of responsibilities of justice, neither in daily life or at the end of our life. Yeah. And so purgatory is the place where those questions of unsettled debts are settled, where we do what we did not do in this life before we got to the judge, meaning Christ, the one speaking, and we settle those debts and we're purified of the dross of that sinfulness. It's not a second chance because you're not going to get that opportunity unless you're God's friend, even though you have unsettled debts to pay. So I think that developed understanding over time, although immediately the church started praying for the dead. The Mass was being offered for the dead. You see that in the Fathers. So it had this sort of understanding, which then coalesced in a more complete theology, time going on, contemplation of that mystery going on.
Outstanding. Well, if you just joined us, you're listening to Catholic Answers Live. I am your host, Tim Staples. Our guest is Colin Donovan from EWTN. You are welcome to join with us via your questions. And if you'd like to get a question in on any aspect of Catholic theology or practice, if you just want to talk to us, or if you have something really bugging you, we'd love to hear from you at 888-318-7884. That's 888-31-TRUTH. And we're going to go to our first phone caller. We've got Dennis calling on his Catholic Answers Live app. Hello, Dennis.
How are you?
Doing great. Welcome to the broadcast. What's on your mind, brother?
So what's going to happen to the animals during the 3 days of darkness? I'm no animal activist or anything like that. It's just I have pets, and what if I have to take them out and things like that?
Okay, well, Dennis, good question. First, maybe we need to talk about what are these 3 days of darkness, Colin?
Sure. Yeah, there are in a number of mystics, and I'm not talking about somebody on a blog writing last week. I'm talking about You go back to the 1800s and you go to Anna Maria Taigi, who is a blessed. You go to Elizabeth Kennori Mora, who is a blessed. You go to Sister Elena Aiello, who died in the 50s and is already a blessed. They all had mystical revelations regarding a punishment that has come upon the world. In Sister Aiello, who Benedict beatified here in 2011, I think it was, she spoke of 70 hours, the 70 days, 3 days, 70 hours. We're talking some period of time of very severe punishment. We don't know what that will be. We don't even know if this is a metaphor for something even. And this is the difficulty. We can take mystical revelations, and these are legitimate mystics approved by the church, whose credibility is asserted by the fact that they've been declared at least venerable, in some cases beatified, in some places canonized, who have spoken of such a purification or tribulation. Now, what it exactly means, a number of things. Are these contingent prophecies? Yes, just as those at Fatima were. We can prevent them from happening by our response to the call of God, to the response of Our Lady. And the other is it a reality, something coming from the heavens, or is it some metaphor for some other kinds of persecution that will be brief and short and purifying? So I think with regard to the animals, the answer to the question would depend upon what it entails. And so we can't really answer that question. Sure. But we'll wait and have to see. But it seems prayer established from the credible mystics, from the message of Fatima, and those are the ones people should listen to, not the people writing in blogs and websites who suggest specific programs and schedules and time frames, and right. They've got the charts, they've got the timelines and all of that. We don't know that. That's in the providence of God and depends somewhat on how we respond in prayer on behalf of the world.
And of course, Colin, this is a private revelation. So how do we distinguish that from the doctrines of the faith?
Well, the doctrines of the faith are those things which are declared on the infallible authority of the church. And that's why I use the expression credibility. It would be easy enough to say these are private revelations, let's dismiss them. The credibility here is the credibility of the Roman magisterium in judging and declaring these people to be venerable blesseds and saints. So it's not easily to reasonably dismiss, right. Although, yes, it is not of the faith.
Yes, it's not required of Catholics to believe.
Right, because what will happen whether we believe it or not, and it doesn't, it helps to be prepared for disasters in the world anyway.
As my old spiritual director, when I was in the seminary, Father Patrick Brennan, good old Jesuit, used to say, you're not required to believe in Fatima, but he said, you'd be stupid if you don't. Anyway. Yes. Anyway.
That's the basic point.
I appreciate the call, Dennis, and we'll go to our next phone caller. We've got, I need to go to a break first. So Patricia, Margaret, Julian, Don, Bryce, hang on. We're going to get to your calls. And remember, we've got a second hour coming up as well, folks, with Tim Staples being both host and guest. So you probably want to get your calls in now so Colin can answer them. But I'll be here. We'll be here for 2 hours. So keep those calls coming at 888-318-7884. We're going to take a quick break right now, and we will be back after this.
Catholic Answers Focus is our favorite podcast, and it could be yours too. Find it at CatholicAnswersFocus.com. This week starts with 2 sorrowful feasts. So on Monday's episode, we asked Father Hugh Barber about why we Catholics celebrate sorrows. The topic seemed especially appropriate for 2020. And then on Wednesday's episode, we gave Jimmy Akin 2 simple tasks. Explain the Kalam cosmological argument and tell us whether it proves that God exists. Jimmy, of course, nailed it. Catholic Answers Focus is available wherever you get your podcasts. Right now, seriously, it's available. You can check Catholic Answers Focus.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
And we are back live. My name is Tim Staples. I am your host today on Catholic Answers Live, and we have a wonderful and knowledgeable guest in Colin Donovan, Vice President for Theology at EWTN, and one of the hosts of their very popular apologetics broadcast, Open Line. Want to mention real quick, folks, we have a free, whenever I say free, I know I like free a lot. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there who like that word as well. We do have a free ebook for you, folks, and it is Magic and the Occult. A good topic this time of year. Next month, Halloween is on the way. But Magic and the Occult, what dangers do they present to our children? Check it out now. Get your copy of our new, somewhat new, free ebook, 20 Answers, Witchcraft and the Occult, right now. Just go to shop.catholic.com and click on the button at the top of the page. That's shop.catholic.com. Get your free ebook now. All right. Well, Calvin, if you don't mind, we're going to get right back to the phones here.
Okay,
we've got some
very good.
great questions coming up. We have right now Patricia from Newark. It looks like Newark, Ohio. I expected New Jersey to be the next word. Newark, Ohio, calling on St. Gabriel Radio. Hello, Patricia.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to the broadcast. What's your
Hello.
question for Colin?
Thank you. I appreciate all of your broadcasts. I listen to them frequently. Well, my major question, I come from a Protestant background. I am not Catholic, and I am somewhat confused when it comes to the book of Revelation. Some people are teaching that there is a rapture, out of Thessalonians as well as Revelations, and then the second coming. And I listened at one time to one of your guests. I'm not sure it was on this show, but maybe on Call to Communion or something else. And he talked about that there really was, the way that you interpret Revelation and only one coming. And I wanted to know what you do teach about that in terms of how do you interpret the passage in Thessalonians as in regard to the coming of Christ and then in Revelations? That's my
Great question. Colin?
Sure, yeah. Okay. Well, let's first look, I think, at the totality of what the church teaches. And that is, in the book of Revelation, you find a lot of symbolic language. This was very common for that period. There is an intertestamental period between the canonical books of the Old Testament and the canonical books of the New, where there was a lot of apocalyptic writing. You can imagine the Jews were suffering a great deal from the time of Antiochus in the 2nd century or even 2nd century BC, all the way up to the 2nd century AD. And so there was a lot of this apocalyptic style with the symbolic language. So one frame of reference has to be that the language there is symbolic. It's not meant to be taken as a historical account of these things will happen in this particular way, although there clearly is an order there. And so you look at the different symbols of that, and there have been two interpretations over time. And one is more literal interpretation, and that is that, for instance, You read about all of these things that will happen, these terrible crises, and then that there is 1,000 years peace, and then there is the return of Christ, and so on. And so a lot of what is called dispensationalist theology is built upon the concept that there is a rapture of the church at some point pre, mid, or even, I think, post-tribulation. There are
Yes.
some theorists there. And that there is this tribulation, and afterwards Christ comes and he reigns for 1,000 years, and then he somehow mysteriously departs and the devil arises, and we do that whole thing all over again. That's never been an attitude of the church, although there has been a period when there was thought to be there would be 1,000-year reign. Very quickly, I think, especially in the 3rd century and 4th century with Augustine and others, they come to the conclusion that symbolism of the 1,000 years, for example, is a symbolism of the era of the church. So you get two ideas. You get sort of a general idea of the persecutions the church would go through, and you get sort of a general idea of then the whole apocalypse of the end, the rendering of the end. It's very similar in that respect to Matthew, where we get the not only do our Lord predict the fall of Jerusalem, he used a historical understanding to teach us about the fall of the world at the end of time. So
Right.
a lot is packed in there, and you can unfold that in various ways over history. So all of the antichrists and so on are then associated with the different figures in history, until at the end of the world there will be one antichrist whom Christ will slay with the breath of his coming. Now, where does the rapture fit into that? Well, the rapture fits into that not as a way of sparing Christians the cross. Jesus said, if they do this to the green wood, what will they do to the dry? I don't know why any Christian would think they're going to be spared the passion of Christ, the suffering of Christ. No, we are to be associated with the suffering of Christ. He said this in so many ways. And so humanity will go along this path, and Christians will have the possibility of accompanying Christ in his suffering. And in the end, he will deliver them from the evil of that time, but it will be an eternal deliverance. It won't be a temporal deliverance. So we are in the 1,000 years until the time of the Antichrist and the second coming of the Lord. And the rapture is not the rapture of people out of the suffering, but at the end of time,
Yes.
there will be a rapturing of those who are alive on the earth and experiencing those days to be with Christ. And there will be a resurrecting and transformation of the dead to be with Christ,
Right.
all together, so that all the dead and the living will be with Christ at the end. So that being seized up refers to the rapturing at the end of the world, when the judgment takes place and the guilty will go to hell, and the just who are living will be taken to the Lord, and the dead whose bodies are in the ground, whose souls are with the Lord already, will receive their bodies back, and then all will be in God. So when you look at that, then you have to back off and say the symbolic references here can refer to every time, even though they refer to one time specifically. And there are other ways of interpreting it. I think Scott Hahn, for example, has a beautiful Eucharistic interpretation of the book of Revelation as well, which says a great deal about the nature of the Mass and so on, the intercessory value of the angels and saints with God and union with Christ. And so there's a lot in there. But looking for a historical account is for the Catholic unnecessary, any more than looking to Genesis 1 through 3 for a historical account. It's in a theological account, and it is theological information, but it also has chronological information. But we're mistaken to try to read a scientific or history book into early Genesis, just as we are mistaken to read a history book into the book of Revelation, although there is a lot of information about how history unfolds in that book.
Sure. And Patricia, I can tell you as a former dispensationalist myself who used to preach it from the pulpit, my eyes were kind of opened to some of the problems with the rapture theology of dispensationalism. When you think about it, Patricia, the way I was taught, and probably you have been taught, is that the book of Revelation really isn't for us, except for the first 3 chapters, right, Colin? From that perspective, from chapter 4 to 22 is all about the end of time, so it doesn't really apply to us, which I started even before I was Catholic to see there's a problem here, because the Word of God is not just for, people perhaps hundreds of years from now or even thousands of years from now, but the Word of God has application in our lives in any and every generation until the end of time. Well, Patricia, I wish we had more time, but I love the way Colin points out that really we are living in right now the book of Revelation and experiencing this, and in various ways. All right, well, we will be back right after this quick break with more of your questions and more Catholic Answers.
We're glad you're with us. Stick around for more Catholic Answers Live.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
What are the basic teachings of Islam? How does the Quran compare with the Bible? Does Islam really encourage violence in God's name, or is it a religion of peace? In 20 Answers Islam, you'll find smart, solid answers to these questions and many more, taking a look inside Islam to reveal what its own theological authorities teach, and cutting through the ignorance and wishful thinking that are too common in our culture. 20 Answers Islam is part of the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com and take a look at this exciting new series from Catholic Answers Press.
Everyone can influence others,
especially those who are celebrities or high-profile individuals.
How do you feel most of them use their influence?
Let your voice be heard on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
And we are back live. This is Catholic Answers Live. I am your host this first hour, Tim Staples. Just want to inform you that I'll be here a whole nother hour as both host and guest in the second hour of Catholic Answers Live. So you can keep those calls coming in at 888-318-7884. That's 888-31-TRUTH. Our guest this first hour, doing a fine job, I should add, is Colin Donovan, Vice President for Theology at EWTN, and we're going to get right back, as promised, to those phone lines. We're going to go to Margaret, who is calling from Ann Arbor, Michigan, listening to us on Ave Maria Radio. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, you are welcome.
I have I've been reading the Diary of St. Faustina, and they're going through the book. One of her superiors talks about having her focus on the attributes of God. So that really got me thinking, what are those attributes? And I've looked up things online, and a lot of what I'm pulling up are from Protestant theologians, and
Sure,
and one
yeah.
article I came across had 15, and they all sound reasonable, but I want to make sure what I'm looking at is good, solid
Sure.
Catholic
Sure.
source.
Great.
So I'm wondering.
Great question and an important one. Colin?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have to think of what the origin of the term is. It's a philosophical term, really, and that is, and for reading on it, I would recommend something like Thomas Aquinas, although that's pretty heavy reading. You can get other books that try to explain it. I'm not sure if Peter Kreeft in some of his books does this. There's a little handbook. I think it's called The Way. It's not the Escriva book, but another little book which summarizes it. And here we're talking about the characteristics of the divine nature.
Yes.
So what are those? Well, one of them is, we know right off the top, eternal. God is eternal. So we can say that his eternity is one of the attributes of his divine nature. We can say that he's infinite. In other words, there's no limit to him. We don't say he's captured within the universe. He's not part of the universe. He's infinite. So eternal and infinite. He's spiritual, which means that he's simple, and that's an important thing, because in God, the philosophers say, is his essence and existence are the same.
Yes.
In other words, when John the Apostle says in his gospel, God is love, he's saying, literally, that's the nature of the divine, that's an attribute of the divine nature. He is that. If we say God is justice, he is that. There is no complexity in God. It's not like, there's justice here, there's mercy, love over here. But in God, every action is imbued with all of who he is, and certainly beginning within the Trinity, which is why you have the divine persons, that procession of that eternity, that simplicity, and so on, that becomes then the Son, who is the Word, and the Spirit, who is the fruit of the divine paternal will, and the love of the Father and the Son, therefore. And so all of these things come from these attributes. Now, we can say many other things as adjectives. That a characteristic of the divine nature, obviously, is its omnipotence, its all-knowingness, and so on and so forth. So you could multiply attributes in that way.
Right.
I think in Judaism and Islam, the various divine names that are used, for example, are efforts to name the attributes in some respect. El Shaddai, for example, all powerful. And so these are different things that you can say.
Yep.
So I think this is what the Superior was trying to tell Sister Faustina, and that is, meditate on the nature of God. And meditation is always an effort to penetrate with our finite intelligence into who God is. And so that is why I think she was suggested it as something to contemplate. We do it in a more complex form, the words of the gospel, the words of the Old Testament, the New Testament books, or in the catechism. These are all multiplication, you might say, complications and expressions of the truth about God in many words.
Right.
Whereas to meditate on the attributes is almost the starting point. And I think that's the purpose of it. So I think you'd find many good Catholic books in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, for example.
Yes.
In speaking about God, it will tell you about the attributes of God. But I think it is an excellent idea for a meditation for any of us at any point in our spiritual journey.
Sure, and I'd also encourage you, of course, as Colin mentioned, St. Thomas Aquinas, I think lists 14, as I recall. But you have an excellent article in the Catholic Encyclopedia on the nature and attributes of God. I think it lists 12. Sometimes they're listed in different numbers because sometimes you have attributes that are kind of separated into two, and sometimes they're joined as one. And so there's not a real definitive list, because there are different numbers. But excellent article there at newadvent.org, The Nature and Attributes of God. Really appreciate your call. And with that, we are going to go to our next caller. We have Julian calling from Noonan, Georgia, listening on YouTube Live. Hello, Julian. Do we have Julian?
My call.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah, can you? Oh, thank you. I had a question. When babies are born, do they have a knowledge of objective right or wrong, or is that something that's learned over time? Is
Great,
it, nurture
great question.
Yeah.
Very important question. Thank you, Julian.
No, sense knowledge is something learned over time. They have the gift that we all have, and that is an intellect and a will. And the human nature, unlike the angelic nature, which simply receives as an intuition from the higher angels and ultimately from God, the truth, we must acquire the truth through our senses. Now, God, obviously, in the prayer life and mystical life, can infuse knowledge, but as a general matter, we receive it through the senses. And that's why education of children is so important. They're not coming as the complete package, if you will. They're coming as this baby human being who has to learn all that we learned in our early life. And so they do that with different psychological capacities at different stages. And I think pretty much whether it's in education or theology, historically or in the present, agree that by the age of 6 or 7, in 8, that period in there, that barring some developmental difficulty and abnormality, that a child is able to grasp things in a serious enough way that they can understand the difference between good and evil, right and wrong, grave sin, lesser sin, all of these kinds of things. This is why the church doesn't require the confession of a child before the age of the dawn of reason or the age of reason. Until then, it's a process of exercising those faculties of intellect and will, learning about the world, yes, seeing from the good and bad example of others. But the thing about the intellect, and this is where Aquinas and others speak of the natural law, is the intellect can make judgments independent of what other people tell you or whatever. And the consensus of people over history is that certain things are right and certain things are wrong. Most cultures accept that murder is wrong. Now, granted, there were cannibalism in that. There's exceptions to that kind of thing. So nature can come to this knowledge as a general matter, all human beings, if not individually because of some defective experience, then at least collectively in a society and culture. And we do find a fairly universal morality on some points, but not to the extent that God through Moses and then through Christ did not have to reveal it so that everyone can come to a knowledge of what is right and wrong. And so the child is not born with all of that information. He acquires it. This is why the devil works so assiduously to corrupt children, why the Marxists and others want your child to corrupt them. It's also why the church wants your child to be properly educated and catechized to the truth. Then they're able to preserve that because they can then see the difference between light and dark.
All right. Appreciate your call, Julian. And real quickly, we're going to go, and perhaps we'll have to finish this question on the other side of the break. But let's go to Don in Middlesex County, New Jersey, and we'll get your question in, Don, before the break. What's on your mind, Don?
Well, hi, Dr. Donovan and Tim. You know, I was a far from exemplary son for my parents, and I didn't do the chores for a long period of time, and I didn't honor my father and mother many times, and I know that's a mortal sin. I pray for their souls every day, and if they're in purgatory at this time, I think they're in heaven because they were good parents. I just feel guilty about it, and it weighs on me every day. By my prayers for them, does Jesus listen to those prayers and maybe I don't want to be presumptuous, but does he offer me leniency on the day of my death if I do that?
Well, I'll tell you what, Don, that's a great question. We're going to take a break right now, so hold that thought there, Colin. And after the break, Don, can you stay with us through the break? Can you stay with us, Don?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And we'll be back right after this break.
This is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Thank you for listening to Catholic Answers Live.
He is honored by the Church as a saint with the title of the Seraphic Doctor.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
One of the greatest theologians and Franciscan mystics in church history, Bonaventure also wrote a biography of St. Francis that was commissioned by the Franciscans themselves. It took a saint and true mystic to understand a true saint and mystic. He died in 1274.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
And we are back live. You are listening to Catholic Answers Live. I'm your host, Tim Staples. Our guest is Colin Donovan. Want to mention real quick, Bishop Joseph Strickland. He is the Bishop of Tyler, Texas, a diocese that includes 33 counties with 1.5 million souls. He's a Texas native, and he has a reputation for being a straightforward, outspoken defender of the Catholic faith. He's certainly one of the most courageous leaders in the church, known for his staunch support of unborn life, the Orthodox faith and morals, as well as reforming Catholic institutions. Well, we have a new book coming out that is based on a series of exclusive off-air interviews that our host of Catholic Answers Live, Cy Kellett, had some months ago with Bishop Strickland. It became a book. It was a lively discussion and needed to become a book, and so we have it now. It's called Light and Leaven, The Challenge of the Laity in the 21st Century. And it deals with a lot of the most important points of our faith and how we as laity are to stand up for Jesus Christ and for the church that he established to be the instrument of the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ that we alone possess as Catholics. Now, if you want to get a copy, you're not going to believe this, folks. You can get a free one. I like this, Nick. This is the second time I'm getting to say free. Because, Colin, I like to give everything away free if I could. But, of course, we got to pay the light bills. But you can get your free copy of Light and Leaven if you, right now, visit Catholic.com. Well, wait till after the broadcast. We want to hear Colin's answers first. Visit Catholic.com and look for the Light and Leaven tile near the bottom of the main page. Again, that's Light and Leaven. At Catholic.com, look for the Light and Leaven tile near the bottom of the main page. Now, we have been having some lively discussions here with our guest, Colin Donovan, and you, our listeners. If you have more questions, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be here a whole nother hour as both guest and host. So we're going to get to as many questions as we can. I think we do have one or two open lines. So do give us a call at 888-318-7884. We've got about 10, 12 minutes left on this first hour, but never fear. we've got a whole nother hour coming up. So do give us a call. Again, that's 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. And remember, you can ask anything you want to ask about Catholic faith, morals, our practices and disciplines in the church. Maybe it's some things that really bug you, or maybe some things you're not quite clear about. Give us that call at 888-318-7884. And with that, we're going to go back to our caller, Don, who had a very important question, and a certain beauty in that question as well. You know, Colin, our caller asked, if you weren't an exemplary son for your parents, can praying for their souls now that they're deceased gain some leniency, I think was the word he used, after death?
Well, the church certainly desires that we pray for the dead. She does in every Mass, and you can have masses offered for your parents. And that has two purposes. One is that you wish them to be delivered sooner from purgatory, and so you're offering what's called suffrage on their behalf. This is, as I noted to a previous caller, something in the Fathers of the Church which very quickly it came to the mind of the Church that we should offer the sacrifice of Christ as represented in the Mass on behalf of the souls who have gone before us. We can't know where they are, but I think Don mentioned that he has a good feeling, at least a sense that his parents are with God, whether they are or not. That's why it's always good to offer masses for your parents and not canonize them without the process the church would do it, and not make that assumption, and to pray for them. Now, the other aspect of that, it's an act of charity on your part.
Amen.
And so therefore that before God has value and merit.
Absolutely.
And so by all means, yes, do it. I can't predict the value before God of a particular act of kindness, such as praying for your parents, or an act of duty as you see it, I think, correctly. But do it and leave it to God. Don't be concerned about that. And I think he loves it when we do that. We just surrender it to him because we love our parents and we love him, and we're gonna do it. And I think you won't lose out as a consequence of having done that.
Absolutely. Thanks again for your call, Don. We're going to move to Bryce calling from San Antonio, Texas, listening on YouTube. Hello, Bryce.
Hello.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm good.
We hear you. And what's on your mind?
Yes, I was wondering if there is a way to philosophically prove or prove through reason the existence of hell.
Great question. What say you, Colin?
Yeah, I think it is. We scramble to be just in the world. Look what's going on right now across the globe. We know there's racial injustice. People desire that there be racial justice. We look at the past. We know about the hatred of the Jews in Germany and what Hitler did. We want that to be rectified. So I think the argument is that a certain kind of common sense tells us there should be a balancing of the scales. And we know really that nothing we can do for life, we're almost back to purgatory here again. There's nothing we can do at life even to balance the scales in our own lives. We have to surrender it to God, and we have to say, help me do this. We pray as we propose to Don that he do for his parents. We pray because we know that what we can accomplish in our own life to make reparation for our own sins. The pebble thrown in the pond that has the disturbance, we can't call that back.
Yes.
How will that be repaired? But go to the extreme case of the greatest evils that have been perpetrated in human history. I think we would certainly want that there be a true justice for that.
Right.
Now, that's the question that I think on a natural philosophical level, which is what philosophy is, Sophia, reasoning about it. But and certainly on the faith level, if we believe in God, that sin is an injustice against God, then how is that going to be repaired except in the next life?
Right.
So I think there are some theological arguments, certainly. The strongest is the witness of the scriptures of Christ himself. So a believer should take that for granted. But I mean, even philosophically, what would be the point of trying to rectify justice if we didn't believe that even if we couldn't, then we know that someday the scales will be balanced?
Yes.
So I think that's the argument. And I think this is the longing of men when you look at the Eastern religions with the idea of karma, of a balancing out or a yin or a yang, although we know that actually can't be possible. I think this is in a certain way a similar answer, and that is that good is rewarded ultimately and evil is punished ultimately. And we know that neither in this life is good rewarded sufficiently, nor is evil punished sufficiently. And I think those are reasoned arguments for the existence of God and heaven, and also for the existence of hell. And if we don't believe there's a devil, we just have to turn on the news and watch the evil going on around the world. And that's a pretty good argument for original sin and for the one who started it rolling.
Would you say, Colin, that perhaps when we get into the fine-tuning of the nature of hell, we need revelation for that, but that there is a punishment after death as well as reward?
Right.
That's knowable by philosophy. Would you agree?
Right. And both Greeks and Jews in the ancient world had some sense of that. It wasn't developed. That would come through the church.
Correct.
You know, whether it's the Valley of Gehenna,
right,
or whether it is the Hades is the place.
Sure.
And so either way, there's a sense of it, but not a concreteness, because they had no revelation to spell it out for them. We have that, which they did not.
Absolutely. Great question, Bryce. Tell you what, we're kind of under the gun, but we're going to go for one more question. And Jason, hang in there. If you want to hang out for the next hour, I'll be joining you. But we're going to go to Deborah right now from Ontario, Canada, listening on YouTube. Hello, Deborah. Are you with us, Deborah? Hello, Deborah. Oh, she dropped. Okay, well, let's quickly go to Jason. We're running out of time. We've got about, 2 minutes, guys? Or a minute? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. All right. Jason, real quick, if you could give us the question, Colin will try to fire out an answer for you.
Does Jesus love the devil?
Ah, great question, Jason. Go for it, Colin.
Okay. The devil doesn't have any goodness left in him morally, but he has the goodness of the divine, of the angelic nature which God gave him.
Amen.
That's why God does not annihilate him. That's why God does not annihilate the evil person who dies. So, yes, he loves that nature even when we have squandered it through our own mistakes and sins.
If it exists, there is goodness, because God can only create goodness.
If he didn't love it, it simply wouldn't exist.
Amen. But that is a great question, Jason. We get that quite a bit here at Catholic Answers. I want to thank all the callers for calling. Fantastic questions this hour. And I want to remind everyone, we are going to be here another hour with yours truly. I will be both host and guest. I look forward to your questions. So you can call over the break at 888-318-7884. Keep those calls coming. So I'll be ready to go in the next hour. Colin, want to thank you. Fantastic job as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. Have a good second hour.
I'll give it my best shot. Hey, can we have a line open to Colin just in case I get in trouble? I can call him. All right. Again, thanks so much, Colin. And
okay, God bless.
Yes, I know we only have a few seconds left. Okay. So, folks, just want to mention real quick that as we hear the music teeing up here, remember those freebies, folks. Freebies are always good. Remember, we have a free ebook for you, Magic and the Occult. What dangers do they present to our children? You can find out now. Get your free copy, folks, of 20 Answers, Witchcraft and the Occult. Just go to shop.catholic.com, click on the button at the top of the page. That's shop.catholic.com. And then we also have Light and Leaven, another freebie. The Challenge of the Laity in the 21st Century with Bishop Strickland. Fantastic book. Light and Leaven. Go to Catholic.com. Look for the Light and Leaven tile near the bottom of the main page. And welcome. My name is Tim Staples, and you are listening to the second hour today of Catholic Answers Live. Now today, this hour, I'm going to be both host and guest. So bear with me. This might get difficult at times. Juggling, I should say, all of the duties here. But we just had a fascinating hour with Colin Donovan in the first hour from EWTN. And we're going to go right back to the phone lines here for our second hour. But remember, folks, you are the one that's going to make this exciting this hour, okay? So we need your help. We need you to call in with your questions. And you don't have to be Catholic. In fact, we welcome non-Catholics to call because we want to know why you're not Catholic. And for our Catholic friends, maybe you just need some clarification on things. You can call as well. That number is 888-318-7884. We are all about giving Catholic answers here. That's what we are about. So give us a call at 888-31-TRUTH or 888-318-7884. And with that, we're going to get right back to the phone lines as promised. And we have Deborah calling from Ontario, Canada, listening on YouTube. Hello, Deborah.
Hello.
Well, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
All right. What's on your mind?
My question is, can a priest leave the priesthood and get married? And if so, what is required? I have to say, I was reading St. John Paul had pulled in the reins on how often or how easy that was to do to gain a dispensation, I think.
Right, correct.
And I'm wondering about now, because a priest friend of mine just announced he was leaving and getting married. And this really is causing a crisis of faith for a number of people.
Right, yes. Well, Deborah, it's a great question, a very important question. I, too, have a dear friend who left the priesthood and is now married, but he did it the right way. And it is true that you can leave the priesthood and eventually get married. But, you know, if you're a religious and you have a religious vow involved in your holy orders, or if you're diocesan and you have a sacred promise that you have made, these are grave matters and they bind gravely on the priest. And so the only way to licitly get married is you must, as you mentioned, you must be dispensed from that vow or that sacred promise. Otherwise, that would be an invalid marriage and you would be living in sin. So, I mentioned that I have a dear friend who was a priest. In fact, he was my pastor a few years back, and he ended up leaving the priesthood. He went through a process called laicization, and that's what has to happen with his ordinary, and it is a process. And it's not automatic, as you mentioned. Like, it's kind of analogous to an annulment. Annulments are not automatic, as much as people want to say, annulments are just Catholic divorce. In fact, I know of cases of people's annulments that were turned down. And so they were not free to marry again. And so it is a process that the Catholic Church takes seriously. And as you mentioned, Pope St. John Paul kind of pulled the reins in on both annulments and laicization of priests. But this is the prerogative of the Church, and the Church can dispense from those vows or sacred promises. Great question, though, Deborah, and we're going to move to our next caller. But I want to mention, folks, that, I like to encourage folks to call because, I said at the outset, you really make this broadcast as a call-in broadcast. But I want you to think about something else, too. When you call in a question, you're not just asking for yourself. There can be hundreds, if not more, of people who have the very same question. So don't be shy. Call in your question at 888-318-7884. And you're not only going to get blessed, God willing, with good, accurate theology and philosophy, but you're also going to be helping others as well. And with that, we'll go to Jose calling from Somerset, PA. And, did I forget to give the number? It's 888-318-7884. If you want to get in your questions, remember that can be on any matter of faith and morals or juridical matters, discipline in the church, our practices. Give us a call, 888-318-7884. Again, we're going to go to Jose calling from Somerset, Pennsylvania, listening on EWTN on Sirius XM 130. Hello, Jose.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
I am doing great, man. Welcome to the... Oh, are you a truck driver?
Yes, sir.
I just heard that horn. Now, I didn't get to ask you, though. I wanted to ask you, toot that horn. Go ahead. There you go. Okay, Jose, what's on your mind?
Well, it's been a long time since I last talked to you, and prior to that was a very long time because Mr. Coffin was in the house as the host.
Yes.
But I came across, and well, let me say first that thank you for your ministry because you allowed me to kind of stick to my faith and actually defend the faith. And I view a lot of YouTube, which is like you might say almost fake news for the most part.
Right.
But, there were a couple of preachers, non-Catholic. One was like on the streets getting filmed, talking about fire, brimstone, that if you're on the list, fornicator, sinner, drunkard, you're going to hell, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it was in front of churches telling that people shouldn't go into churches because they're bowing to statues. They're praying to Mary. The Bible doesn't say to pray to Mary.
Sure.
And the priest, that you're crossing yourself. And then there's one that I kind of like started to respond, but I kind of stopped halfway because I was running out of time. And that one there was a YouTube titled "The 5 Reasons That Mary Is Not Perpetual Virginity," that she's a sinner, and blah blah blah. You know, they went down the list, and the one I responded to was from the very beginning in Genesis that God told Satan, or the serpent, that I would put enmity between you, your seed, and the seed of the woman.
Yes.
Meaning that if there's enmity, there's the enemy between you and the woman. And how can Mary be a sinner?
Yes.
It just went on, and then my final response to that one was, well, once you get Tim Staples' book, Behold Your Mother.
Yes.
Because I mean, there is so much explosion in me. Like,
yes.
I just feel like in one of your talks, with Matt Dula saying, you say something about my Mary, and we're going to duke it out, and that's how I felt.
Yes. Well, Jose, I really appreciate your call, and I know it can be frustrating at times because sometimes you feel like you're trying to drink from the proverbial fire hose when somebody is kind of spouting out with so many different things all at once. But I think you're on to something, Jose. What I recommend that folks do in a situation like that, if you feel like God is calling you to kind of intervene, so to speak, and to share the faith or to evangelize with some of these street preachers or even online, folks that are, we believe, we hope, well-intentioned, right? But are caricaturing the Catholic faith in so many different ways. What I think the mistake a lot of Catholics make is in thinking that they have to answer everything, right? No, you don't have to answer everything. Let them go. Let them unspool and say, all you got to do, and I think you did this right, Jose, is pick the one that you're most comfortable with responding to, and just say, excuse me, could I just jump in here for a second? Because really, if you plant one seed, if you present a solid argument for one thing, I will guarantee you, as one who has experience, it happened to me, as you know, Jose, at meeting Sergeant Matt Dula all those years ago. Hard to believe, 34 years ago, when I met Matt Dula in the United States Marine Corps, he just started pecking away, and he made good arguments. And then at nighttime, I can remember times, Jose, at night, I couldn't sleep because those verses were bouncing around my head. I would have to get out of the rack in the middle of the night and go get my Bible and try to refute these Catholic arguments. And it drove me crazy. And so I was determined I was going to prove the Catholic Church wrong. And that's really how I became Catholic. So God bless you, Jose. You planted a seed, and really that's all we can do as Catholics who love our Lord and Holy Mother Church. But we are going to have to take a break right now. And Anonymous, Jenny, John, Ellen, Bob, hang on and keep those calls coming at 888-318-7884. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more of your questions and more Catholic Answers.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Catholic Answers Focus is our favorite podcast, and it could be yours too. Find it at CatholicAnswersFocus.com. This week starts with two sorrowful feasts. So on Monday's episode, we asked Father Hugh Barber about why we Catholics celebrate sorrows. The topic seemed especially appropriate for 2020. And then on Wednesday's episode, we gave Jimmy Akin two simple tasks: explain the Kalam cosmological argument and tell us whether it proves that God exists. Jimmy, of course, nailed it. Catholic Answers Focus is available wherever you get your podcasts. Right now, seriously, it's available. You can check Catholic Answers Focus.
Wings is the weekly newsletter that's packed with program info, features, and updates of all that's going on at the Global Catholic Network. Just go to EWTN.com/wings. Fill out your name and email address, and you'll start getting your wings every week. When you get yours, send it to all your friends, and they can send it to their friends. And pretty soon, we're covering the whole world with the good news about EWTN. Wings, the weekly newsletter from EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
And we are back live. You are listening to Catholic Answers Live. I am your host and guest for this, our second hour open forum. That means you're going to determine what we talk about, folks. So give us a call at 888-318-7884. That's 888-31-TRUTH. Anything you want to ask about Catholic faith or morals, discipline, juridical matters, our practices, whatever you want to talk about is what I want to talk about. So once again, give us a call at 888-318-7884. Now let me ask you a question. How would you like to be able to answer questions about the Catholic faith and the Bible like Jimmy Akin, Carlo Broussard, Trent Horn? The good news is that you can. With hard work and the right tools, you can learn Catholic apologetics, folks. You can learn how to be an apologist. How? Well, we've got our brand new Catholic Answers School of Apologetics. You enroll, and I will guarantee you, you are going to learn a ton. Now, you'd say, well, how about if I get a sampling first before I sign up? Well, we've heard folks say that. So guess what? We've got a killer opportunity just for you. That's why right now we're offering our listeners a chance to take a free trial lesson out of Jimmy Akin's module, Beginning Apologetics. That's right. Go right now to Catholic.com/free trial and sign up for your introductory lesson. If you like what you see, and we know you will, we're confident you'll take advantage of our $50 off special and sign up for the whole course. That's Catholic.com/free trial. Registered now for your free lesson. I know I just completed a course on The Apologetics of Ecclesiology, or we're calling it Proofs for the Church. That will be coming out soon. We have a lot more courses coming. It is exciting, folks. We hope to end up with hundreds of courses for you in Catholic apologetics. All right, now with that, we're going to go back to the phone lines, and let's go to Anonymous. Hello, Anonymous.
Hi there, Tim.
Hey, welcome. You know, we have quite a few people named Anonymous that call in. So you've got a common name. Yeah. All right, welcome to the broadcast.
Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah, what's on your mind?
Well, I have a myriad of problems, and I'm just kind of needing guidance for hope. But I'll name only a few because, like I said, there's a myriad of them.
Okay.
And I will do the Jim Carrey exhale, inhale of breath. I'm going blind. I just got a divorce. My wife, or ex-wife, converted to the way of paganism. She's now considered herself a Wiccan. And then I'm having a strong feeling that the Catholic Church is so divisive. I am so dangerously close to becoming an atheist. Right. So those are the main things that it's bugging me.
Yes.
Now, the divisiveness. I go to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and there's a priest. He's an FSP priest, if you know what that means.
You mean SSPX?
Oh, no, not them. No.
You mean the FSSP? FSSP,
yeah,
Fraternity of St. Peter. Yeah, that's a wonderful group, yes.
And I told the priest there I was considering going to the Byzantine Church, and he goes, no, they're too schismatic. You are not an Eastern Catholic. You are a Western Catholic. I'm like, okay. So then with my wife, we were married for 17 years, and she had a hard time finding a job for so many years. She converted to paganism. She got her prayers. I'm sorry, her prayers answered. She now just got her job that she's been wanting, and got 2 interviews lined up. So, and then with the church saying I can't remarry, we had a valid Catholic marriage, and God willing, I'm going to have many years to live, and I'm not allowed to remarry, so I'm feeling very lonely.
Right.
So that boils it all down to, can you give me some guidance to hope?
Sure. You know, first of all, one thing kind of jumped out at me when the priest said, and maybe he didn't understand you, if you're talking about going to a Byzantine Catholic church, that's not a schismatic group at all. Now, if it's an Orthodox church that's not in union with the Bishop of Rome, yes, that's schismatic and you don't want to go there. But if it's a Byzantine Catholic church, they are in full communion with the Catholic Church, so that is certainly a viable option. I'm assuming that you were talking about an Orthodox parish that's not in union or in full union with the Bishop of Rome. But, you know, to get to the heart, I think, of your question, you know, whenever we experience hardships, pain, suffering in our lives, to me, the place we always have to turn is to Jesus Christ. We used to sing an old song in my Protestant days, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus Christ and his righteousness. And we believe that as Catholics, that our hope is in Jesus Christ. And I would like you to focus there, my brother. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us in paragraph 643 that Jesus Christ, his life, death, burial, and resurrection can be understood as nothing more, nothing less than an historical fact, right? This is an historical fact. Now, when I say nothing more, of course, there is more than just the historical fact. There are the mysteries of the faith that take us beyond that historical fact. But it's important that we understand that it is a historical fact. Jesus Christ really did live, really did die, was resurrected from the dead. There are over 500 eyewitnesses in the first century of that resurrection. We have the apostles, of course, who were At the time of the crucifixion, scurrying in every direction, they had lost their faith. But when they saw the resurrected Lord, it transformed them. They became martyrs for the faith. We have Saul, right? Paul, the future apostle, Paul, who was an enemy of Christ, who was there when Stephen was stoned to death. He was holding the coats of those who did it, and he persecuted Christians. But when he saw the resurrected Lord, it transformed his life. Brother, this is real. Jesus Christ really did live, really did die, and he is resurrected from the dead. And my brother, one of the central things he did when he walked this earth was establish the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And that's why you need to be Catholic, and that's why you need to stay Catholic. Because Jesus tells us in, for example, Matthew 18:15 through 18, if we have problems in our lives, we need to, and we're confused, you ultimately take it to the church. And the one who fails to hear the church, Jesus says, is to be as a heathen and a publican for whatever and I'm referring to, again, Matthew 18:15 through 18. For whatever the church binds on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever the church looses on earth is loosed in heaven. So when the church gives us the truth of sacraments and salvation, justification, Mariology, the papacy, and on we could go, that's Jesus Christ speaking to us. And my brother, Anonymous, that's the source of our hope. Do not leave the church, which is Jesus Christ extended into this world, because if you do, you lose the very source of your hope. Because it is only in Jesus Christ that we can overcome all the obstacles of this life, my brother. It's only when we have the hope of Christ in our hearts that we can say with St. Paul in Romans 8:18, the sufferings of this time of this world are not even worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed. So again, my brother, I encourage you in the midst of all of this pain and such, now's the time to embrace your Catholic faith in an even more intense way. Get to Mass, get to confession. Let Jesus get the sin out of your lives and anchor you in the faith. Does that make sense, Anonymous?
It certainly does. And like my Catholic friend at work said, eyes on the prize.
Amen, brother. Eyes on the prize. I think that says it all. God bless you. Thanks so much for calling. And wow, for all of us, I think Anonymous, I know for me it was a shot in the arm. We have to be reminded over and over again that in this life, my friends, as Paul said, if Christ be not raised from the dead, we are of all men most miserable, most to be pitied. Because if this world is all there is, man, there ain't nothing. I don't know how people can live without the hope that comes in and through Jesus Christ and in and through our one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. Well, with that, let's go to our next caller. We've got Jenny calling from Chattanooga, Tennessee, listening to EWTN on Sirius XM 130. Hello, Jenny.
Hi, Tim.
Welcome to the broadcast. What's on your mind? Yes.
Thank you. Well, thanks for your work. I joined the Catholic Church a few years ago after being a lifelong Bible-only Protestant.
All right.
Your testimony and work really played a big part in my conversion, so thank you.
Oh, praise God.
So I have a question about chastity. I have a lot of close friends who are Protestants.
Yes.
So I'd like a way to talk about chastity in marriage, aside from anything to do with natural family planning.
Right.
I haven't found a good way to explain chastity in marriage without that coming into it.
Okay.
But like to most Protestants who, have no qualms with contraception, if I bring that into the explanation, that just doesn't work because it's not something that's part of their marriage. So I know chastity in marriage is something, that we're all called to.
Yes, we are.
Any Christian marriage. So I'd like to be able to explain it without that being part of the explanation. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. You know what? I'm going to take it from a different tact that you may not have considered before. And it can also be a way to evangelize at the same time. In my book, Behold Your Mother, A Biblical and Historical Defense of the Marian Doctrines, in the section on the perpetual virginity of Mary, one of the demonstrations I give of why it's so important that we understand the perpetual virginity of Mary is she is, and St. Joseph, the paradigm for us in understanding that it is God who makes the rules for marriage, not us. And when God intervenes, as he did in Mary and Joseph's life, whether you're Protestant or Catholic, this was not your average marriage. God called in a particular way, and they responded and obeyed because it's God who makes the rules. That can kind of be a first step in, and I'll tell you what, we'll take the next step after this break. We do need to take a quick break, but when we come back, more of your calls, more with Jenny, and more Catholic Answers.
Have a question? We've got answers. Catholic Answers Live.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Who are the Jehovah's Witnesses, and what do they believe? How do you respond to their claims that God isn't a Trinity and Jesus isn't divine? What's the best way to evangelize Jehovah's Witnesses when they come knocking at the door? In 20 Answers, Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll find smart, solid answers to these questions and many more, giving you the knowledge you need to respond to friends, family, and missionaries who try to steer you away from the church and into Kingdom Hall. 20 Answers Jehovah's Witnesses is part of the 20 Answers series at Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com and take a look at this exciting new series from Catholic Answers Press.
Everyone can influence others.
Especially those who are celebrities or high-profile individuals.
How do you feel most of them use their influence?
Let your voice be heard on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
And we are back live on Catholic Answers Live. I'm your host, Tim Staples. We are having some fantastic conversations, and you are free right now to join in on the conversation because this is open forum. You can ask anything you want to about our Catholic faith, morals, juridical matters, discipline in the church, our Catholic practices that a lot of folks don't understand. Give us a call at 888-318-7884. I'm going to try to get to your calls and your questions at 888-318-7884. Okay, and we are in the midst of a conversation with Jenny. Are you still with us, Jenny?
I'm here, yes.
All right, well, I wanted to pick up where I left off because when I talk about the Blessed Mother, again, this doesn't have to be a Catholic or a Protestant because we all agree here that Mary and Joseph had a somewhat of a unique situation because you don't give birth to God every day, right? In fact, that only happened once and never will happen again. But remember when Joseph was ready to divorce her because she came up pregnant, the angel intervenes, or the Holy Spirit through the angel, and says, "Fear not to take your wife." And why? because the child conceived in her is born of the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, even though he didn't have full understanding of what's going on here, he obeyed God. And so the most important point is for us to understand that in marriage, God is the creator of marriage. It's rooted in our natures. It goes back to Genesis, chapter 2, verse 24, male and female, he created them. They became one flesh. This is foundational to who we are as human beings. It's so crucial for us to understand, and to understand God makes the rules. And so now, God doesn't always send an angel, right, to reveal to us our particular calling in marriage, as he did with Joseph and Mary. But he does give us the rules, both through natural law. These are things that all of us can know just through reason, because remember, marriage was around, and this is something too that I think is important for us to try to help our Protestant friends to see. Marriage began before there were any nations, before there was any religion, right? There was marriage because it's written into our very natures. Adam and Eve, the first marriage, was, talk about made in heaven. Well, it was made by God in their very natures. And so the rules, again, are established by God. And some of those rules, again, we can know by nature. If we could talk about that just for a second, we can help people to understand that, look, St. Paul talks about in Galatians or in Romans 2, 14 through 16, the law, as Colin and I talked about in the first hour, natural law, or the law that's written in our hearts, right? We can understand things like it's not good to eat your neighbor. Right, Jenny? I mean, I don't think cannibalism is a Catholic-only club to say no to, right? This, by nature, we can know things like murdering the innocent and such are contrary to nature. Well, adultery is another thing we can know just by using our common sense. And how do we know that? Because we can know as Catholics, as Christians, as men and women of goodwill, that there is a purpose to the conjugal act. And I find, Jenny, that folks who are not even Christian can understand this. I had a conversation not long ago at a coffee shop, maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, with a young college student, believed in, well, maybe there's a power up there, but didn't really believe in God, although by the end of our conversation, we made some headway. But I shared with him this. I said, look at the nature of the conjugal act. It has a purpose. Why is it, Jenny, that we can look at everything in this universe virtually? I mean, we can look at a tree and we can know that a tree has roots that sink into the soil. It's a perennial plant, sprouts leaves in the right time, and fruits if it's an apple tree, an orange tree, and such. And we can know certain things about that tree because of its nature. Like if you pour battery acid on its roots, that's not good for the tree. In fact, it can destroy the tree. It's not good because we know the nature of the tree. Well, the same can be said for a human being or for any human action. Each action has a nature. Right? Lying. This is something that my friend who wasn't even a Christian agreed with me on. I said, can you agree that we have a communicative faculty? That is, we are made to speak the truth, and therefore it's not good to lie. Or would you say it's good to lie? Of course it's not good to lie. Why? Because we have a communicative faculty, and the purpose of that communicative faculty is truth. So if we purposely lie to someone, we're acting contrary to the nature of the communicative faculty. We're therefore acting contrary to our own natures. I think people can understand that the sexual act as well can be understood. It has a twofold purpose. That is the union of one man, one woman, and the procreation of children. And so if you do any action, and by the way, whether within marriage or outside of marriage, we're talking about nature here, any action, conjugal action. Now, of course, because the conjugal act is for the purpose of the union of one man, one woman, and procreation of children, it must be in the context of marriage that safeguards both of those. But any action, whether in marriage or out of marriage, that is contrary to that union of one man, one woman. In other words, you run around with your lover outside of your marriage, that's contrary to the nature of the conjugal act, or contrary to the reproduction of children. So if you're doing, sorts of immoral things within marriage that render the conjugal act infecund, or in other words, sterile or unable to produce a child by nature, then that action is gravely immoral, whether you are married or not. So these, I find, anyway, Jenny, to be principles that the church and natural law gives to us, to where we can start having rational conversations with people and help them to see that, yeah, you can't just do whatever you want to do in your marriage. You must be faithful, because the nature of the conjugal act, implies, more than implies, a commitment to that one woman, or if you're the woman, that one man, as well as an openness to life. So if you think about acts that you're performing, whether you're married or not, if they're not in keeping with those the two essential ends, you're hurting yourself, like pouring the battery acid on that tree. You're hurting the tree. You're hurting yourself. And it has ramifications beyond yourself as well, because marriage, remember, is a public institution. There's no such thing as a purely private marriage, because marriage by nature is public and has effects beyond the couple, namely children that come into the world, as well as a communication by the way in which we live as to the nature of marriage. So there's all sorts of things that we can bring into into the conversation. But does that kind of get things started, Jenny?
It does. It does help. I guess part of it for me is I just need to have the courage to be willing to say those things and
Yes.
face the looks of, you're a complete and total weirdo.
Oh, yeah. Jenny, we just had a caller yesterday call in and called us bigots and you name it, because of our position on homosexual acts being gravely disordered. As you know, Catechism paragraph 2357 says, but you know what? After a conversation that went somewhat similar to what the conversation is right now, I think we made some headway, because we can, in fact, and I think that's important too, Jenny, is to know, and not only you, but all of our listeners, to know that this stuff works. It's real. And if you share these principles with people, guess what? It's going to sink down into their souls and into their hearts, because every human being has the natural law written on their hearts. And so in order to continue in these gravely sinful actions, they have to act against their own natures, as well as the mysterious prompting of grace that's known to God alone. I mean, God is giving grace in ways we don't even know to that person we're talking to. But when we have that confidence to understand that principles of natural law are real, they are true, and the revelation we've been given as well about nature is real and it is true, when we share this faith of ours, the Holy Spirit is going to work confirming His word, and He's going to use my best theological language, He's going to zap them. Right? He's going to convict, as St. John tells us, one of the principal things the Holy Spirit does is convince the world of sin. But Jenny, thanks so much for your call and a really important question. But right now, I can't believe that clock's moving too fast, if you ask me. But we got to take a quick break right now. But when we come back, Fraser, John, Ellen, Bob, Cameron, hang in there. We'll try to get to your questions right after this break.
Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, communicating the faith.
And I wanted to tell you guys how great your show is, because I listened to you guys for every day for the past 5.5 months. It's because of you guys that I came to the Catholic faith. Now I'm going to church on Sunday for the first time, because I just got out yesterday from jail. And I got my mom to go too, and my girlfriend is also going with me. Wow. She's willing to give the Catholic faith a try.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic. Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
And we are back live. My name is Tim Staples. I am your host this hour of Catholic Answers Live. And man, we've been having some great conversations over the last couple hours. If you want to get on the conversation, I'm going to give the number out one more time. That's 888-318-7884. Again, 888-31-TRUTH. And as promised, we're going to get right back to the phone lines. We have Fraser calling from Bolton, England, listening on YouTube. Hello, Fraser.
Hi there. Hi.
Oh, hey, brother, you know why we put you to the top, right? It's not just because you're calling from England, but because we love that accent.
Yeah, I thought that might help, to be honest.
Yes. So what's happening, Fraser? How can I help you?
Hi. So I've been reading a few different things recently about Calvinism.
Yes.
And the sort of ideas about predestination. And it's something that I felt quite uncomfortable about it. I didn't like the idea of not having free will.
Yes.
But the more I thought about it, if God is all-powerful and all-knowing, and God created us, then God already knows the choices that we're going to make. Right. And so some of those choices may cause us to fall out of grace and to, possibly go to hell.
Right.
So it makes sense when you think about it logically. So how do you kind of refute that position?
Sure, Fraser, it's a great question. I want to emphasize first that the church has been consistent for 2,000 years, all the way back to in the 4th century. There was a heretical group known as the Predestinarians. They were kind of the precursors of John Calvin, and they were immediately pounced upon by the magisterium when they began to teach that predestination means ipso facto that you don't have free will. That has never been taught by the Catholic Church. That is false. In fact, the Council of Trent would deal with it beautifully in Session 6 on justification. If you read the canons, especially Canon 17, but there's a couple other canons like Canon 4 that just nail it to the wall that we cannot deny free will in our understanding of predestination. Now, there are different ways of communicating the mystery of predestination, but in whatever way you present it, as a Catholic, you better not do it to where it eliminates free will, because then you're on the wrong side of the magisterium. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, for example, in paragraph 1037 says, quote, God predestines no one to hell. In order to go to hell, one must freely commit a mortal sin and remain impenitent in that sin until death. And so the church makes it very, very clear. But now, to get to your question, I just had to kind of lay that out for you. But the fact that God knows, and this is the key point here, that he knows what we are about to do. In fact, because he is omniscient, he can't not know, okay, and still be God because he's omniscient. But knowing something is about to happen does not mean you cause it, in that strict sense of John Calvin, to where there is no freedom. St. Augustine used an analogy here, and it is an analogy, and no analogy is perfect. But Augustine says, To God, and we have to understand this, to God, there is no past, present, future. There is the eternal now. He knows all things, right? Well, the fact that he knows the past, and by the way, we can know the past too, doesn't mean he caused it, right? The fact that he knows, and we can as well know things that happened in the past, doesn't mean he caused those things in the past to happen. It simply means he knows them, because this is the nature of God, to be omniscient. Well, in the same way, God in his cognition knows the future, just as you and I, in fact, better than you and I know the past, because we don't know the past perfectly like he does. And so his knowledge of the future, just like our knowledge of the past doesn't cause the things in the past to have happened, God's knowledge of the future does not cause those things to happen. Now, here's a more perhaps easily understood analogy. There are certain things I can know, for example, are going to happen. I have a cup of water in my hand right now. If I move this cup over to the edge of this table and push it a little bit farther, guess what? I know what will happen, right? That cup will fall to the ground and the water will pour out, okay? Well, if it's not me pushing it, but it's Nick pushing it, I can know the same exact thing. If Nick takes his finger and pushes that cup, it's going to go over the edge. And as he pushes it, I can say, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. What did I tell you? And it happened. But does that mean I caused it? No. I simply knew what was going to happen because I know laws of physics. And I know if he does this, this is going to happen. Well, analogous to that, God knows everything that's going to happen. And again, there's various different ways in which the church and great members of the church, great theologians have tried to explain theologically this great mystery of predestination and how God knows the future. But I like Cardinal Bellarmine. He kind of uses the analogy of the mechanic who knows. Now, Bellarmine didn't know what a car is, but let's use the example of a car. If somebody builds a car from the ground up and they know it so well, they know what it can do. They know what it will do when it encounters certain circumstances when it's driving on the road. It doesn't mean that the man causes everything that's going to happen. It means he knows the car so well that he can tell you what's going to happen when it encounters certain things on the road. That's another analogy of how well God knows us inside and out. And in fact, he is the first cause of every one of our actions. The first cause. We are secondary causes, but he's the first cause. So he knows us so well that he knows everything that we are going to do, but it doesn't mean he causes it. So those are a few ideas, and there's lots more in our tradition. But does that kind of get at it, Fraser? The idea is that knowing something is going to happen does not necessarily mean you caused it.
Yeah, I think that really clears things up. And I think it's interesting going back to Augustine as well, because I know that a lot of people say that Augustine kind of was, a lot of Protestants would say that Augustine was an early founder of their ideas as well. So that was really interesting. Thank you.
Yes, well, God bless you, Fraser. And I encourage everyone to read St. Augustine's letter on grace and free will. You read that and tell me he's a Calvinist, and you did not read that. St. Augustine was not a Calvinist, but I appreciate that call, brother. And we don't need another break, right? We can cruise to the finish here. No more breaks, right? Good. All right. Let's go to John, calling from St. Louis, Missouri. And John, you are on Catholic Answers Live. What's happening?
Hi, Tim. Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Welcome.
So I was reading, or I tried to read, I got probably through a third of it, USCCB's article on forming conscience for citizenship.
Yes.
And so I kind of understand that the basic premise of, forming a conscience on who to vote for is that,
right,
pro-life issues have to be preeminent. They have to be the number one.
Correct.
They have to be the number one on your, idea. But
correct.
Like it says something about if there are proportional issues,
right,
that would counter that on somebody else's agenda. And I was
Correct.
wondering, because the proportional aspect kind of seems to be the
yes
issue for a lot of people. So like, what is proportional? I mean,
right.
and like, I don't know, what are some concrete examples? Because I know that you can't really compare, the stock market to pro-life issues, but when you're comparing one pro-life issue to another, how does it become proportional? That was my main question.
Right. It's a great question, John. And that document, as you know, the USCCB's document is good. And it maintains, it really toes the line on magisterial teaching because, John, as you have rightly stated, the magisterium has been clear. What comes to mind immediately for me is Christi Fidelis Laici, paragraph 38 from Pope St. John Paul the Great, where he makes clear as well that the life issues, and he says the right to life, he doesn't single out abortion, but he says the right to life. And after listing all these other rights that we have, right, a right to health, a roof over our heads, education, and more, he says, if the right to life is not defended to the utmost, all other rights are mere illusory. So you are correct. The church teaches that the right to life is the preeminent issue. But now when it comes to the different, issues like abortion, euthanasia, embryonic stem cell research, physician-assisted suicide, all of these are life issues. How do we prioritize? The church gives us a principle, and that's what the USCCB does, gives us that same principle that when we're considering these different matters, there can be, proportionate reasons to vote for someone who, and I like to use this as an example. Let's say you had a kind of Osama bin Laden kind of character running for president in the United States, who just happens to be pro-life when it comes to abortion. But he's in favor of genocide when it comes to all Christians, Jews, right? We could go down the list. Well, we could certainly vote for a candidate who is actually pro-abortion, but is against things like genocide against 70 million Catholics, 100 million Christians, and so forth. That's what we're talking about, and what the bishops are talking about when we talk about proportionate reason. And so we really have to get down to brass tacks. And of course, the church does not micromanage. The church gives us the principles, and we got to use our, as we say in the Marine Corps, our brain housing unit in order to apply these principles. And Catholics tend, there can be good Catholics who disagree on this point, but I argue there simply is no proportionate reason. I know some argue that climate control is proportionate reason because we're talking about the destruction of the planet. I think that is really wrong-headed. But the church doesn't micromanage this. What we need to do as Catholics is take these principles. Look, and I think from just common sense, the life issue is the ultimate issue. Abortion is the ultimate issue among the life issues. Now, the magisterium has not made that conclusion. That's Tim Staples, but I think it's grounded in solid principles. We're talking about over 60 million babies slaughtered in America alone, and the number is growing. I simply cannot see a proportionate reason, barring something like Osama bin Laden running for president. We have to consider the babies, my friends, and we have a real possibility if we vote for life in the coming elections, my friend, we have the real possibility of actually overturning Roe and saving untold hundreds of thousands of babies' lives. But at any rate, folks, there's much more we could say to that end, but I want to thank again all of our callers. You guys were fantastic over these last 2 hours. Please keep Catholic Answers in your prayers. We have a lot of work to do in proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ that we alone possess in full to a world in desperate need. Until next time, God bless you and your entire family.